Protesters concerned about Palestinian relatives marched in New Orleans while hundreds of Jewish worshipers gathered in Metairie to grieve those lost in the weekend attack on Israel by Hamas militants.
Maddie Kurth reports.
Horrified. It brings back memories of the Holocaust in ways that I never thought I would experience. I'm too young for all of that.
Another day of fighting in the Middle East as Israel wages war on Hamas following shocking attacks and kidnappings on Saturday. The overall death toll from the conflict at nearly 1,600 lives lost. At a solemn unity event at Congregation Gates of Prayer in Metairie, support for Israel stood unwavering.
I'm not surprised. We have a very strong Jewish community here.
More than 500 people packed the sanctuary at the behest of the Jewish Federation of Greater New Orleans and the Greater New Orleans Clergy Council. Many families bringing their children to hear the history and strength of the Jewish people as local law enforcement kept a watchful eye.
And that they have a piece of this, and you can't leave the work to building the state to others.
People could come here and pray together and be together and be safe. And certainly that was increased tonight, but we'll continue to do that for the foreseeable future for them.
This has the makings of a prolonged conflict. If that happens, that can spur increased acts of discrimination and anti-Semitism and provoke a much larger conflict that could even reach our community, where we have a very strong and proud Jewish population. We also have an Arab and Muslim population in New Orleans as well. And this has the makings of something that can inflame tensions.
Earlier in the evening, Palestinian supporters rallied at Duncan Plaza, spilling into a march down Poydras Street. Some said they worried about discrimination here in the States, others more concerned with friends and relatives in the Middle East.
Nothing I come about here will match anything my Palestinian brothers and sisters, siblings go through in Palestine.
It was good for my parents because they're Muslim from Palestine.
Shadi Ahmad visited Palestinian family for the first time last summer. He says he feels the distance from his loved ones more now that Israel has launched its counterattack on the Gaza Strip.
I check up on them every week.
How are they doing this week in particular?
They're doing good. They're scared from all the stuff that they're hearing right now.
And tensions increase as the war enters its fourth day. Israel responding to Hamas militants with airstrikes and a blockade of the Gaza Strip, while hostages, including children, are held, with Israelis and some Americans still missing. Hamas has vowed to kill those captured if Israeli counterattacks in Gaza continue.